Have you ever noticed how some people walk into a room and without saying a single word, command respect? No raised voice, no flashy display, no effort to impress. And then there are others who talk loudly, explain themselves endlessly, demand attention, and still get ignored. That difference is not charisma, it's not confidence tricks, and it's definitely not status. Respect is the most valuable social currency in the world. And yet, most people try to earn it in the worst possible way. They chase approval, they over-explain, they react emotionally, they trade their principles for comfort, and without realizing it, they destroy the very thing they want most. The Stoics understood something about human psychology more than 2,000 years ago that modern culture still refuses to accept. Respect is not requested, it is not negotiated, it is not demanded, it is emitted. And that emission has nothing to do with what you own, your title, or how loudly you speak. It comes from who you are when pressure is applied. Welcome to the Stoic Lighthouse. This is where ancient wisdom cuts through modern confusion, where philosophy is not comfort, but clarity, and where character matters more than appearance. If this kind of thinking resonates with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps this lighthouse reach others who are navigating the same fog. Today, we're going to break down 4 Stoic truths. 4 pillars that quietly shape how the world perceives you. If you apply them, respect will no longer be something you chase. It will follow you naturally, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you've become a man of undeniable inner weight. Number 1. Your reaction is your responsibility, and everyone is watching. In moments of pressure, people aren't paying attention to what happens to you. They're watching how you respond. Your reaction is a public display of your inner strength or your inner weakness. A man with a short fuse, who explodes at the slightest provocation, who complains at the first obstacle, who blames others for his own mistakes, is sending a clear message to the world. I am not in control. My peace depends on circumstances and on other people. No matter how justified that reaction feels, it never commands respect. At best, it generates pity. At worst, quiet contempt. The Stoic understands that real power begins with mastery over reactions. This is the practical application of the dichotomy of control. You cannot control events, but you have total authority over the meaning you assign to them. Epictetus, who endured slavery and physical suffering without surrendering his dignity, made this truth unmistakably clear. Epictetus warned, "Remember that it is not the one who insults you or strikes you who harms you, but your judgment that these things are harmful." A man who internalizes this becomes psychologically unshakable. Insults bounce off. Adversity becomes a test, not a threat. Calm in chaos is not a performance. It is evidence of real inner power. People feel it immediately. They sense someone who is not dragged by the storm, but stands as the rock the waves break against. This idea traces back to Socrates, who argued that no true harm can come to a good man because his character remains intact. But it was tested most brutally in the 20th century, in the most inhuman conditions imaginable. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, observed something extraordinary in the concentration camps. Even when everything was taken from a person, one freedom remained. Viktor Frankl wrote, "The last of the human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." The man who exercises that freedom does not ask for respect. He silently commands it. When you take radical responsibility for your reactions, you become predictable in the best possible way, stable, grounded, unmoved by emotional chaos. And in a world addicted to overreaction, nothing is more rare or more respected than emotional self-command. Number 2, your value is not negotiable. The power of a personal code. Respect does not grow from likability, it grows from consistency. People who are respected are not social chameleons, changing colors to fit every room. They are predictable in one crucial way. Their principles do not bend under pressure. They have a code. In a culture that constantly rewards flexibility of values, saying whatever is convenient, adjusting beliefs to gain approval, the Stoic chooses a harder path, and paradoxically, a far more powerful one. The Stoics believed that virtue is the only true good. If your highest aim is to be just, disciplined, and courageous, then compromising your principles for comfort, money, or validation is not a small mistake. It is a collapse of character. The man who tries to please everyone may be liked, but he is rarely respected. Why? Because when pressure rises, no one knows where he stands, and what cannot be relied upon cannot be respected. A man with a personal code, someone who knows exactly what he will and will not do, even at personal cost, creates psychological gravity. People may disagree with him, they may even resent him, but they respect him. The Stoic hero who embodied this truth most clearly was Cato the Younger. His integrity was so uncompromising that his presence alone could influence judgment. Plutarch recorded, "So great was the authority of Cato's character that in a case where the evidence strongly opposed the accused, the jury acquitted him solely because Cato testified to his character." That is the power of a life governed by principle. In modern terms, psychologist and author Jordan Peterson often returns to this same idea from a different angle. Jordan Peterson explains, "If you are not capable of saying no, then you are not a moral agent. You are merely a tool." Virtue lies in the capacity for restraint. Having a code means knowing when to say no. No to dishonest shortcuts. No to cheap laughter at someone else's expense. No to gossip that poisons trust. No to breaking your word when it becomes inconvenient. Every time you honor your code, you reinforce your self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of respect from others. People feel it instinctively. They know your value is not for sale. They know your loyalty cannot be bought. They know where the line is because you refuse to cross it. A man without a code negotiates his worth daily. A man with a code declares it once through action, and once declared, it does not need to be explained. Number 3, speak less, mean more. The economy of words. One of the most underestimated sources of respect is silence. We live in a loud world. Opinions everywhere, explanations for everything. A constant pressure to speak, react, comment, justify. Modern culture teaches that visibility comes from noise. The Stoic practices the opposite discipline. He understands that power is not measured by how much you say, but by how little you need to say. The man who talks constantly, who fills every silence, who rushes to give his opinion on everything, often reveals insecurity. He speaks to be seen, to be validated, to feel relevant. The man who is comfortable with silence sends a very different signal. He listens more than he speaks. He observes before he reacts. And when he finally speaks, his words are deliberate, precise, and difficult to ignore. This is temperance applied to communication. Epictetus was relentless about this discipline. Epictetus advised his students, "Let silence be your general rule. Say only what is necessary and in few words." This is not about being cold, antisocial, or withdrawn. It is about intention. Words are tools, and powerful tools lose their impact when used carelessly. The more you talk, the more predictable you become. The more you explain yourself, the weaker your position often sounds. The more you argue emotionally, the less authority you project. Ancient traditions understood this long before social media existed. Pythagoras, a pre-Stoic philosopher, required his students to remain silent for years before being allowed to speak in his school. He believed silence disciplined the mind and filtered out trivial thought. In modern psychology of power, this same principle reappears. Robert Greene distilled it into one brutal rule. Robert Greene states, Always say less than necessary. When you try to impress people with words, the more you say, the more common you appear. Silence creates gravity. When you speak less, people lean in. They listen more carefully. They assume depth before you even prove it. In practical terms, this changes everything. In meetings, don't rush to speak first. Listen. Map the room. Then offer one clear, concise observation that actually moves the discussion forward. In disagreements, don't try to win through volume. Ask one precise question that exposes the weakness in the other argument. Silence is not timidity, it is restraint. And restraint is one of the clearest signals of inner strength. A man who does not rush to speak is a man who does not need to prove himself. And a man who does not need to prove himself is naturally respected. Number 4, respect everyone. Fear no one, the strength of universal dignity. A man can master his reactions, live by a code, and speak with precision. But if he uses these traits to dominate the weak and flatter the powerful, he will never be truly respected. He may be feared, he may be tolerated, but he will not be admired. True respect, the kind that creates loyalty and quiet authority, comes from an unexpected source: universal dignity. This is the social expression of a core Stoic idea known as sympathia. The Stoics believed that all human beings share the same rational spark, different roles, different ranks, but the same underlying nature. A man who understands this develops a kind of confidence that does not depend on hierarchy. He does not need to elevate himself by lowering others, and he does not need to shrink himself before authority. As a result, he treats everyone, from the janitor to the executive, with the same baseline of respect. This is not weakness. It is strength in its most stable form. Arrogance toward those below and submission toward those above come from the same source: fragile self-worth. The man who respects everyone reveals something rare. His value is internal, and because of that, he fears no one. Marcus Aurelios, the most powerful man in the world, constantly reminded himself of this truth to avoid corruption by status. Marcus Aurelios reflected, "Remember that you are a citizen of the world. Act with justice and a sense of duty toward the human community." He understood that power did not make him superior, it made him responsible. Musonius Rufus, another major Stoic teacher, pushed this idea even further. He argued radically for his time that slaves and women possessed the same capacity for virtue as elite men. Character, not position, was what mattered. Modern psychology reaches a similar conclusion. Jordan Peterson often frames respect as an act of disciplined humility. Jordan Peterson explains, "Treat the person you are listening to as if they might know something you don't." That attitude does two things at once. It generates respect from others, and it makes you sharper, wiser, and harder to manipulate. In practice, universal dignity looks simple, but it is rare. It is thanking the person who serves you and actually meaning it. It is listening fully to someone with less status. It is disagreeing with authority without hostility or fear. When people see that you neither bow nor bully, something changes. They recognize a man whose worth is not granted by titles, a man whose confidence does not require comparison, a man whose presence feels stable and grounded. And that kind of presence commands respect without ever asking for it. When you strip everything down, respect is not a tactic, it is not a performance, and it is not something you chase. It is the shadow cast by a well-built character. You've seen the 4 pillars. Self-command, the discipline of owning your reactions no matter the circumstances. Integrity, the strength of a personal code that does not bend for comfort or approval. Restraint in speech, the wisdom of saying less so your words carry weight. And universal dignity, the rare ability to respect everyone without fearing anyone. Together, these pillars reveal a hard but liberating truth. The more you focus on controlling how others see you, the less respected you become. The more you focus on controlling who you are, the more respect follows naturally. The Stoics never asked how to look important. They asked how to become worthy. So here's the real question. Which of these pillars is hardest for you to practice in today's world? And which one will you start strengthening first? Share your reflection in the comments. Philosophy grows stronger when it's tested in real life, not kept abstract. If this guide brought you clarity, support the channel by liking the video and sharing it with someone who could use these principles right now. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the Stoic Lighthouse. This channel exists to bring ancient wisdom into modern life without dilution. In the next video, we'll examine a man torn apart by duty, genius, and moral consequence. A story where responsibility collides with regret and where power reveals its hidden cost. We'll ask a difficult question, not whether history judged him fairly, but whether he could live with his own choices. We'll leave you with a final thought, one that captures the essence of Stoic character. Do not seek to be admired, seek to be admirable. See you in the next video.